What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right there on YouTube. I think we're going to hit 40,000, hopefully today, maybe tomorrow. And thank you so much for your support. I appreciate you guys coming here today. Got some exciting things happening in not only the markets, but also in the macro world and some interesting news developments. I think it's safe to say that we're starting to heat up again. The action is starting to come back a little bit. Doesn't necessarily mean that we should be taking any action. It just means that hopefully there's a little bit more change always leads to good things in crypto historically. So excited to see this happening. The news of the day really is all about Bitcoin, but we're going to talk about the altcoins. We're going to talk about China a little bit. I'll talk about what's going on in the news, and then I want to talk about an interesting perspective that may be helpful as you guys go forth and conquer in your journeys outside of the Coin Mastery podcasts and TV show. So in the last few hours, I guess, or course of the last 12 or, probably 12 hours or so, Bitcoin has had a pretty, not necessarily a terrible pullback, but it's certainly come down in the, let's say 5 to 10% range, which of course everyone thinks that the world is collapsing when that happens. I love it. So we saw this go down right now. I'm just looking at the Bitcoin Coinbase chart, and I'm looking at the 1 hour candles. The reason I'm not looking at, I'm looking at this range is because anything longer than this, and you don't really see a lot of the patterns, anything closer than this, you get lost in the minutia pretty quickly. And the question is it on its way back up, or is it going to go down? I'll tell you what I'm going to do, because I'm just going to cut through it for all you people that just love that stuff. You see over here, let me zoom out a little bit, on this run, there's a little bit of support down here, and then previously on the early September run at the previous high, there was some sort of resistance, sorry, not support, over here on the second, right around 4,900. We see a little bit of that again, right around 4,908. And then as mentioned, there's also this right around October 12th, there's a straight green candle sequence that didn't get traded out, right? It was just straight up. There was no buying and selling like you see over here where everything is up and down really quickly. This was just straight up. That's always an issue when you look at the long-term stuff. So as I'm looking at this, as much as it's painful to wait, I'm going to wait right around 4,900. So I would probably set my buy orders between 4,950 and 5,000 as my next buy-in. If it doesn't get that low, if it just starts screaming back up, so be it. But this is what I'm doing. I think this is a solid plan from all the technical guys that I've seen and that I've talked to. This follows a clear strategy. It's a previous level of resistance. There is a chart issue here where it's straight up. And so that I know that I have a very good reason why I'm placing my buy orders there, or at least my alerts, so that I can set my buy orders. And I'm going to go from there. And then if it keeps going below, then you layer the orders accordingly based on previous resistance levels. That's really the best you can do, short of being a pro trader, where you may have some, you may look at more factors, you may look at different things, but I would say for a majority of people out there, myself included, the simpler technical analysis tends to get the job done. And then you recalibrate once you get more data. So my orders are set here, or right around mid 4,900s, and we'll see what happens over the next 24, 48 hours, and go from there. Again, and the other thing, just to be super clear, I'm not putting all my eggs in this basket. I'm just layering in. This is where they start, and then I'll layer them accordingly once I see what the downward volume looks like. and see what happens. I'll also be watching just the volume down here. How much volume is actually happening, because you typically, if you're going to see a big dip, you're going to see a big volume spike, which is why that it's something that would need to happen pretty significantly very quickly for this to be a hard stop. It may be the beginning of a downward thing, or it may just continue, because this volume needs to really increase for that to be a worthwhile. The other thing to keep in mind too is that, like everything in crypto, things seem like it changes so fast that it's October 18th today. We forget that we still have another week until the first Bitcoin gold fork hits, and then another week after that, give or take, week plus, until the SegWit 2x fork hits, if it does. And so that's really, that was one of the original theses behind this whole growth to begin with. And that's not to be forgotten about or overlooked, which is why you don't want to put all your eggs in this basket. Even if you think that this is after it hits this dip, it's going to go to the moon. You gotta put all of your reasonings in place and pack them all in based into what your risk reward would be. So we'll see right there. The next level would probably be right around 44, give or take. And then after that, I don't know. I'd have to, you start looking at the charts after that. But we'll see. I think that it's always a fun day in crypto. Let's open up Bittrex. Some interesting price action has been going on Bittrex. We've been seeing, go back to the first page here. First page, I think we saw a big pullback, especially on Ripple, which was really surprising. That, one, they have a huge market cap, so that's a big deal. And two, this is all during a big conference of theirs. And we're going to talk about what Ben Bernanke said in a minute, because he was one of the keynote speakers. There was also some news that came out that potentially someone running a Ripple crypto exchange in Japan just got arrested. And it's funny to look at this now, because this is another example of buy the rumors, sell the news. And it's almost this is a very loose, non-scientific thought, but almost every time that there has been some sort of news that people are preparing for, and there's a price going up, there's almost always a sell-off after that. There's always the buy the rumor, sell the news. I mean, the obvious example is the OMG Golem that happened, maybe a month ago, when they thought they were going to team up. This is another one where everyone was like, oh, this conference is going to be amazing, and they're going to announce that they now own, France is using Ripple or something. I mean, that's not what was going to happen, but you know what I'm saying. And it never happens like that. The price gets baked in before the conference. If someone knows something, they bought it 3 weeks ago. They're not buying it the day before the conference. The only time news can really move a market is when nobody else knows about it. It's actually breaking news that nobody or very few people had information on to begin with. So yeah, and you'll see this. I've been doing crypto for a few years now. I've only been trading it for 4 or 5 months, but you'll never cease to see people who believe that at this event or when this thing happens, everything is going to go. It's going to be amazing, news-wise, right? Development-wise is a little different, and the buy rumor, sell the rumors, it always happens that way, and people always think that this time it's different, and it's just a terrible bet, right? The risk reward is just never works out in your favor. So I think that's part of the game, right? That's just what it's all about. So yeah, I think the other interesting thing, I don't know how many people are watching, like how deep people get into like rumor mills and stuff like that, but Navcoin getting some major volume. It's coming down pretty hard right now, but there's a big rumor going around by this big publication that historically has moved the market, and they've had some huge picks back in the day. It's a very expensive publication. I can't speak to it or review it or anything like that. But people look for reasons to buy stuff. I mean, the same is true on Amazon.com as it is on Bittrex.com. People want reasons to buy things. And Navcoin was just getting crushed by, or not was just getting proliferated like crazy through forums, especially 4chan, which is just the worst place in the world to get credible info. There is some good info on there, but it's very, you got to weed through a lot. But Navcoin was just being shilled as hard as you can imagine. And then it became a fulfilling prophecy where a lot of volume hit. It became one of the top volume coins on Bittrex. The hundreds of thousands of people that log in here every day saw that this coin was doing the best. They checked it out. They started Googling it. They went to the website. They looked at it. They said, oh, this is pretty cool. They started looking up what was going on. Maybe they heard about the rumor. Then they realized why it was happening. And then they got caught up in it and they bought. And that may seem like a long shot, but I'm telling you, that happens. I've underestimated that force so many times on how big it can be, how much volume that can drive, the ability for social media to move these things. And whether or not it ends up being true, I think is more the fact that rumors and news can move markets like crazy. And whether or not they're real or fake is a different story. But nothing against Navcoin. It's actually, fast technology, and they've got an interesting thing going. I don't own any, but it's just the power of knowing where the prices come from and seeing this stuff in action. And you're seeing a lot of that. I think some of it is because these are depressed prices right now, and you're seeing a little bit of this Bitcoin price move into these altcoins. I think you're also just seeing people that are just, they're trying to push, they're trying to get prices to move. They're trying to get the action back because it's a good time to get eyeballs when you can pump a coin and things go big, stuff like that. So I'm still, I'm not totally convinced. I think if Bitcoin comes down to this 49, I'm gonna buy some of that. In the meantime, I'm still looking at some of these altcoins, but that margin thing has got me a little weirded out. Where this money came from, and I think my plan is to keep looking for good deals on the altcoin stuff. And I think at this point, I've already bought I got some really good deals on the dips. I think at this point, if Bitcoin works, go for it, and then just wait for these forks to clear out, because it's very risky to try to bet even 50-50. I don't like those odds, so probably going to wait on that unless I see some really good deals come through. Let's see. Interesting day over in China. As best I understand, and I was listening to a podcast this morning that explained this, China, they don't have elections or anything like that because it's a communist country. They have a celebration that explains to people what's going on. So every 5 years, I think it is, they'd say, hey, okay, here's the new person in charge. Here's what the new rules are. Here you go. Right? And now politics out of this, whatever you think about, that's your thing. And I'm not, right? But my point of this is that's a big shift in the powers that be and in the new 5-year cycle that they're looking at. And if you listen to the transcripts of this, it is very, very clear that their number one priority is to become the world superpower. I mean, it's not even close. And in previous years, they've obviously said this, but they've talked a little bit more about like diplomacy and helping other people out. This one was just, it wasn't even close how much they want to just rule the world. And as it relates to cryptocurrency, they were the first to do a lot of the regulation, and they may be the first ones to really try to make this happen. What we may see, I should say, is some sweeping reforms that allow Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin trading, some regulations that allow it all to continue, but be regulated. But at least there finally will be some clear rules so that China can benefit from it. And often just having those rules in place allows a lot more money to come in. So this is a big deal because China is such a big player in the crypto mining space. Now their volume has gone down. Maybe some of you saw that tweet. They went from being 95% of the volume down to 1% this year. But they still mine a lot. They still own a lot of Bitcoin. I think it's like 30 or 40% of Bitcoin is in China. Just might not be getting exchanged right now, at least on exchanges that are on regulated blockchains. So I think this is going to be interesting to watch as it relates. Now, what you can do about it, I would probably start checking out a lot of Chinese companies. I think that you go to Binance. If you don't have an account on Binance, you should probably go get one. This exchange, because they often have a lot more, they're going to have a lot more Chinese coins on Binance. I believe Binance is based in Hong Kong, which is like not technically a Chinese country, but it kind of is. But they just have looser regulations. So you see coins like Neo, Walton Chain, Kyber's not Chinese, but Qtum, right? I mean, there's just going to be more and more of these Chinese-based coins that if this Chinese Congress, if the government moves forward and now that there's a new, 5-year run, this could be really interesting. I would keep an eye on Neo, on Walton Chain, on Qtum, and any of the other big Chinese coins that come up in the future as well, because China does not mess around when they want to become a superpower, and this is a very good way for them to do it. A couple more things that I thought were really interesting. I was looking at Cointelegraph. I mean, maybe you do this too, but in the mornings I always check this out just to see what's going on. Often it's nothing really new. I mean, these are content mills. I get it. It's a game of traffic and they run ads. Right? That's the name of the game. But what I thought just stood out to me today is when you're on the homepage of Cointelegraph and you just open it up, they have a list of what are the hottest stories. I'm assuming that means the ones that get the most eyeballs, which indirectly means that it's got to be the most shared. That's right. That's kind of an obvious correlation. Think about, okay, so let's just go through the headlines real quick. The first one, ultra-rich investor predicts Bitcoin price will reach 27,000 in 4 months. Okay. Second, Russia is issuing a crypto ruble. Bitcoin, you go through this, and then you also think about this is probably the most shared. Well, who is the person that is sharing this news? Well, it's somebody that is sharing it with either in their Facebook groups, on Twitter, and they're either trying to show it to people that are in crypto with them to be like, look at this, like, we're going to crush it, and kind of reinforce their own beliefs that this is going to go up, which I believe it will, but that's part of the psychology. Or there's some sort of fear where they put it into a group or they share it because they want to get the discussion going, which feeds the whole crypto cycle of being addicted to Twitter and Facebook and all that. So it's always interesting to me to see what the top news and what the top headlines are as it relates to not only the people that are actually sharing this stuff, but to the psychology that goes into it, because that's what people are writing these articles about, right? That's why they write these articles. It's not necessarily the best news. It's what's going to get the most eyeballs, because this is a business to get advertising. Now, if you click over to Editor's Choice, you see a different style of headline. These are people. This is obviously put in here in a by somebody who manually puts it in, and this is speaking to somebody else. This is probably speaking to more of an institutional investor, or to somebody who is a little skeptical of Bitcoin. They want to get them in the Bitcoin space, but it doesn't have nearly the same number of eyeballs at all. It's more of like a information or news piece, and this is what they probably hoped Cointelegraph would be, But in fact, the first hot stories, this is what it's become. And whether or not they want it to be this editor's choice type of publication, the hot stories are what drive it. And it's the same people that are buying stuff on Bittrex. It's the same people that are buying stuff on Binance. Not necessarily the same people that are buying Bitcoin or Ethereum because they're institutional, big money. But this is a really important point: is that when news proliferates, when stories proliferate, when people want beliefs to be fulfilled, they will do what they need to do to make that happen. That's human nature. That's always been human nature. And it all feeds into a lot of how these prices are still operating. It's been like this for 3 months. It's going to continue to operate like that until more people get into this space. But I think we got a long way for that. So I just think that that's a very important distinction to make, especially if you're not in marketing and you haven't studied this stuff before. But I mean, the stories and the news can move a lot, and it can make the prices do what they do. All right. Ben Bernanke thinks Bitcoin will fail. This, I believe he announced this at the Ripple Swell conference, which, Ben Bernanke aside, I think that this is always an interesting conversation because this guy came from he was the chairman of the Federal Reserve back in the day. And now he's talking about how Bitcoin is a speculative bubble, when he, in many ways, was in many ways he was responsible for his own bubbles, right? With interest rates and the Federal Reserve and printing money and all that. And so it's always funny to see how things change, right? Would he ever admit that he was creating a bubble on his own watch, under his own thing, because he knew how the whole machine worked? Versus with Bitcoin, he may not understand how the whole machine works, and therefore he has a different label and story for that thing. And so what I'm getting at with this, the reason why this matters to you is when the more people that come out and say both, hey, Bitcoin's a piece of crap, or Bitcoin's going to go to $500 million, what were they doing, or what did they do during the day? What did they do before this? And when did they make this claim before that they were right? And when have they ever made this claim before and they've been wrong? Because when you look back at the Cointelegraph stuff, you remember, this is a headline. This is a great thing that people are going to share and be like, oh, I hate this guy, I hate the government, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't matter if it doesn't move the price for you. And you always want to be thinking about that. And the reason why is because I want to share this final piece of news. This all ties together by that guy, Downtown Josh Brown, who, this guy's, he's a CNBC guy. He's very entertaining. It is what it is. But what I like about him is that he's relatively open-minded about change, even if it's not good news for him. And last night he had a dinner with a bunch of crypto people, many of which some of you follow on Twitter, some really smart guys like Ari Paul and others. And it was super interesting to see how he reacted. The biggest thing is that he didn't realize how much money wanted to get into crypto. So he walked away from this realizing there's an enormous amount of money that wants to get in here and that it's going to get in here. So I think that was really interesting. I think the second really interesting thing is this quote, which I will read at the bottom. I'm going to highlight. And that quote is, "There is not a single person I've ever come across who has done a deep dive and didn't come away bullish." And I think this is the thing. I think if I didn't understand cryptocurrency, if I did not understand blockchain, if I didn't understand Bitcoin, and more importantly, if I didn't understand the economy of it, if I didn't understand what was going on with the exchanges, with the news, with the companies being built, if it was something I could actually relate to, if I couldn't relate to it, I would probably be skeptical of this too. I think most of you would, because from the outside looking in, this does look like the craziest thing in the entire world. It's people running around essentially sending huge amounts of money onto the internet to people they've never met before to get digital tokens for something that doesn't exist and claim it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, that is bananas. But when you start to dig into it, there's something very compelling there. And it's obviously very early, it's very new. So there's a huge element of risk and reward for people that do this. But that single quote, I think, is the key, where once people get into it, and they don't have to learn about mining or the actual tech, they just need to understand the whole thing. But once they get into it and they start to realize it, they start to see what this could be. And I think the same is true with any emerging technology that happens out here in Silicon Valley, is when you see the masses and often very established authorities looking at something really new and having one gut reaction to it, or maybe learning a little bit about it and then finding reasons to write it off. And then you see this emerging class of people that really sees the vision of it, and they go all in on this. I mean, this is what happened with not necessarily the internet, but more with Web 2.0, with the Googles, with the Facebooks, with the MySpaces, all the big things that came out from the internet, all the big companies. And that's what I think is going on here. In other words, Bitcoin is like CrossFit. The moment you can't shut your effing mouth about it. The moment you get in, you can't shut your effing mouth about it. And I'm going to leave it at that, because you guys know that one of my big initiatives in the next month is to start to get more people into this space. And I'm doing it kind of hand-to-hand combat at this point, but start to really get people in, marketing to more people, things like that. But I think that this is such an eye-opener when you realize that our community is consuming the hot stories, but the editor's choice is what other people need to read. So the hot stories are what crypto is known for, but the editor's choice, the real stuff, the deep dives, the good info, the logic, this doesn't see the light of day because everybody's caught up in the $100 million ICO with some dude in the basement who ran off to, Madagascar and is living on a yacht. That didn't really happen, but you know what I'm saying. And this is the arbitrage. That's the game. Is that who's going to come out on top? I think crypto is going to come out on top. I think that everyone knows crypto is going to do something big, but nobody really knows how. And it's a lot easier to shut it down. So we'll leave it at that. Great quote. George Soros, when I see a bubble forming, I rush to buy in, adding fuel to that fire. That is not irrational. Classic. Great stuff today, guys. Keep an eye on all these prices. Keep an eye on Bitcoin. Keep an eye on Bittrex. And keep an eye on that news. Stay smart about it. When you share stuff with people that don't know anything about Bitcoin, don't share the hypey stuff. Share the smart stuff. That's what's going to get them to get in. All right. I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.